booktube lying to us, or are these books actually good? That's what we're gonna find out in today's video. Starting out by reading Funny Story by Emily Henry. I saw so many booktubers put this book in their top books of 2024, but off the top of my head I remember seeing both Sarah and Rachel talking about this book in their top books of 2024. So we're gonna start with this one because I've seen it repeated so many times. Plus Emily Henry is an author I already know I like, so I'm a little biased towards this book. And what I know about this book is that our main girl character Daphne, her fiance, leaves her for our other main character's girlfriend, and so Daphne and Miles become roommates, and I'm assuming things progress from there. And Happy Place by Emily Henry was my second favorite book of 2023, so I have high hopes for this one. Like I already said, Emily Henry is one of those authors that I really like, so if she comes out with a new book I'm gonna read it, and this was her new release of 2024 and I'm obviously just now getting around to it. Can we talk about how pretty the pink is of this book? Anyway, I just got to chapter 10. I've been reading pretty much all morning, but I need to log on to work, so I'm giving you a quick update and I need to switch to the audiobook. But I will say there's a little trope in this book that I was not expecting, and I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say what it is. It literally could say what the trope is on the cover, but I have no idea because I didn't read the inside little summary. But either way, I'm not going to tell you because I think it's fun to kind of figure it out as you go. But all of that to say, I'm kind of over that trope right now. It's not that I feel like it's an overdone trope, I just feel like maybe it's just I'm not in the mood for it. I don't know why, because at the same time it's not overtaking the book, and they very much just feel like two besties right now, but at the same time I can see something sparking between them in the future. Also, I'm obsessed with Miles right now. He's got a great personality and his character feels so fleshed out. He feels like a real person. I'm not obsessed with Daphne right now, but I don't not like her by any means. I just love Miles. Okay, I've been listening to the audiobook pretty much all day. I'm now on chapter, I forgot, give me a second. I'm on chapter 20, and for the longest time I was so confused at why the beginning of these chapters has like a countdown to when she's like allowed to move. I was so confused, but it finally gets explained to us and I was like, thank goodness, because this countdown, I know it's going to be an issue in the future and I need it explained to me. So that's been helpful for me. Also, I figured out why I don't love Daphne's character. Don't get me wrong, I still like her, but I find it very hard to love bookish characters, and that I feel like is a very unpopular opinion. But a lot of the time they feel fake to me and they kind of draw me out of the story for some reason. I feel like part of that might just be because as someone that is bookish, I don't want to be reminded of myself, or sometimes I like to be reminded of myself. My camera died, but I had one more thing to say. I don't know what is going on with this book, but it is genuinely making me so happy. Like, I'm laughing, I'm dancing around for them. It is so fun, but like I don't know what it is specifically that is just making me happy. It's just bringing me some type of joy. Anyway, I'm going to go shower, maybe make a cup of tea. I thought about taking a bath. I don't know. It's just very rainy and cozy outside, so I want to set the mood, you know? Because I definitely just plan on reading for most of the evening. It would be so great if I could finish this book today, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. Something about me, toxic trait of mine. I will literally be like, can I finish this book today? Like, I will start a book and be like, can I finish this today? Or even if I didn't start that book that day, I will wake up in the morning, open my book, and be like, can I finish this today? I don't know who I think I am. I'm not a speed reader. I don't read that fast. I do in fact work. So I don't know who I think I am.
Bad traffic ain't a waste of time. When you were there to hold my hand, but I've had it with the 405 since you said I missed my last chance. But I know that you've been asking about me. If I tried though to get you back, would you let me? It might take some time to change your mind. Maybe everything we can make it right. This take me back in your eyes, blinking at me like a caution light. I wonder if you see it. I don't really need a single other reason to make you mine. It might take some time to change your mind, I know.
I went from being in love with them to being absolutely annoyed with both of them right now. I'm at page 340, so I'm very close to finishing this book. But the romance took forever to like actually come to fruition, and I wouldn't call this a slow burn by any means. The heat just kicked on, so it's gonna be kind of loud, but they were taking their sweet old time to get together, you know what I mean? And I felt like that meant that we were going to Okay, girl. I think I was saying I would not call this a slow burn at all. They were just kind of taking their sweet old time to get together. And I thought that that would mean we would not have to deal with that stupid, annoying little third act conflict. I was wrong. I wish I wasn't wrong, but I am. I don't know how I feel right now. I finished Funny Story this morning. I feel like I need to sit on my rating for a little bit longer, but I don't think I got that 5-star feeling from this book. I'm just not sure because I really enjoyed them together, but at some parts I felt too much like characters and I found myself correctly guessing a lot of things in this book. And I feel like in a romance, I am going to guess a few more things than I would in any other genre, but this I felt like I was just guessing things left and right. On another note, I was obsessed with how this book ended. I love a book that ends in a very full circle moment, and this book did exactly that, and I loved that. I felt like everything was tied together so perfectly. So I'm going to sit on this rating for a little bit longer, but we are moving on to my next read, which is Brotherless Night. This was recommended by This Story Ain't Over. It was technically her second favorite book of 2024. Her first favorite was An Academy for Liars, and I really wanted to read that one, but I couldn't get my hands on the book because I wanted to get it on Libby and the hold was just way too long. So I'm going to read Brotherless Night, and honestly I'm a little bit nervous for this book because it sounds like it's something very different than what I'm used to reading. It's about a young girl who dreams of becoming a doctor, but a civil war breaks out and so she ends up becoming a medic. I'm a little nervous because it sounds like this book could end up being really sad, and I am not in the mood for a sad book right now. I want to feel some joy, some happiness, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Fingers crossed that I like it, because also I have this book on Libby and I only have, I think, 2 or 3 days before my hold expires, so I have got to get to reading. It is the next day. I only got 16% of the way through this book last night. I will say this book is not what I expected it to be, and I'm worried that as the story goes on I'm going to start confusing things because she's got a couple different brothers, and then also there's a couple different groups going on, obviously because it's a civil war. They have like different names for the groups and like her teachers. There's just a lot of characters going on top of the whole civil war aspect, which is why there's like different political groups obviously. And I know that I am the type of reader that gets confused pretty easily when there's a lot of different characters going on. I mean, it also just depends on like how it's written, but I do find it pretty difficult sometimes when there's a lot of characters and a lot of names being thrown out. But also for the longest time yesterday I was so confused because I was like, I thought that this was historical fiction, but Libby had it under just fiction, like not historical fiction. So I was like, wow, this is so impressive that the author came up with all of this, like, and it's not based on any history or anything. No, it is. And I don't know anything about this time period in history or anything like that, which I also find a little bit difficult when I'm reading historical fiction. Like I read, I think it's The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna that follows the Texas Dust Bowl, and I also struggled a little bit with that book because I didn't know the history behind the Dust Bowl and like everything that they went through, which I guess that kind of means like I went into the book blind and I was surprised a lot, but still I struggled a little bit with that one. So I'm worried I'm also going to struggle with this one. Another thing though, I really like how it's written, but I find myself not wanting to pick up this book, which is so weird because I'm like putting off putting up this book. Like I will literally procrastinate reading this book, which normally for me it means that I should probably just DNF the book. But then when I sit down and actually read this book, I'm like, oh, this is actually good. Like I like how this is written. I'm interested in where the story is going, but I don't want to pick up the book at all. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's a really weird feeling to have. So I'm not sure. Also, the chapters are really long in this book, so I might just read until the second chapter. Like I'm 15% of the way through the book and I still haven't read 2 chapters yet. So I might just read to the second chapter and see how I'm feeling. If I'm still feeling a little bit iffy, I can just DNF it because I obviously don't want to keep reading a book that I'm like not super into. I want to give the book a fair shot. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on this one a little bit more because I'm just confused on like why I'm procrastinating reading it when at the same time when I open the book I'm like, oh, this is so like interesting and fun and I like how it's written. So I don't know. I'm just as confused as you are probably. I have some bad news. I am going to DNF Brotherless Night. I got 20% of the way through the book and I just found myself not caring about it, not wanting to pick it up. And I don't want to force myself to pick up a book even though I see the potential and I like the way it's written. I just don't feel like I'm in the mood for it, so I am gonna DNF it, mostly because I never want reading to feel like a chore because I love to read. It's a hobby, you know? I don't want to force myself to read anything, but I am excited for the next book. I'm gonna read All About Love, and I cannot remember off the top of my head who I saw recommending this. I do remember that it's a non-fiction book, and that's the only thing I remember about it, but I thought it was so intriguing because I don't feel like I see non-fiction talked about a lot, and non-fiction is a genre that I'm trying to branch out and read more. My goal this year was to read 10, and I've read 1 so far this year, so I'm excited to read this one. Also, tomorrow is Valentine's Day when I'm filming this, so it kind of feels fitting, even though I actually don't remember what this book is about, but based off the title and the cover, I feel like hopefully it'll be fitting for Valentine's Day. I'm now 21% of the way through this book. It's honestly reading a lot lot faster than I expected it to be. Just because it's nonfiction, I kind of assumed that it would read a little bit slower than what I'm used to. It is basically a deep dive into like the meaning of love. Like she starts off the conversation with what is the true definition of love. I found that really interesting. She's also talking about love a lot in the sense of like a family and parenting, and obviously I'm not there yet. I'm not at that point, so I'm kind of like I hope she kind of pivots this conversation a little bit differently, but it's very interesting so far. I think it actually falls under more of the self-help nonfiction category, but I do think it's very interesting so far. I don't love self-help books, to be honest, but it's not feeling too self-helpy, if that makes sense.
Just you and me and an empty road. Maybe I can make it cross your mind. Jump back in, baby, go, go, go. Oh, I know that you've been asking about me. If I tried though to get you back, would you let me? Oh, it might take some time to change your mind. Maybe everything we can make it right. This take me back in your eyes, blinking.
I am now 51% of the way through this book. Also, happy Valentine's Day / belated Valentine's Day. But I'm 51% of the way through this book, and I'm getting to the point where I kind of don't love it. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad book by any means. At the beginning of the book, I literally was thinking I like this so much that I think everyone should read it. But now we've pivoted the conversation and I kind of don't love it, which is funny because I remember saying last night that I was hoping we would pivot the conversation away from love surrounding like families and like growing a family. But now that we have pivoted the conversation, I'm like, oh, that was actually really helpful knowledge before, and now I just don't love the turn that we've taken. And I'm actually really surprised that she brings scripture into the book because I was not expecting that at all. But I will say I feel like this book covers a lot more topics than just love. She does a good job of bringing everything back around and connecting it to love, but it covers so many more topics than just love, and I really like that. Also, this book does not feel like a self-help book, and I don't love self-help, so I'm glad that it doesn't feel that way. But as of right now, I'm not loving it. I'm just not obsessed with it, and I don't want to say that I'm bored because I don't feel bored. I don't know, there's just something off that I can't put my finger on. I'm on my second cup of coffee of the day, which you know what that means. I'm working today. I don't know why, but I've accidentally trained my brain to think that I can't work unless I have a fun drink while working. I don't know what's going on there, but that's caused my caffeine dependency to become out of control, but that's a problem for another day. Anyways, I'm going to switch to the audiobook of this book because I just finished lunch, and so that means I've got like 4 hours left of my workday and I want to listen to something while I work. So I figured I would listen to the audiobook for a little bit. But I'm on chapter 9. I think that's like 65% of the way through or 70% of the way through, something like that. Anyways, I'm switching to the audiobook. I'm still enjoying it, but I'm not obsessed with it by any means. I feel like if I wasn't reading this book in this video, I probably would have spaced it out a lot more, like kind of read it a lot slower, which I don't think that that's impacting my rating at all. One thing that I do really like about this book is the way that the author talks about love in the sense of gender norms and like how you grow up with like that different knowledge of love and how that affects us as adults, and I think that's so interesting. It's only been a day since I finished All About Love, and I feel like I have already forgotten everything about that book, which I was worried would happen just because, I don't know, towards the end of the book I was like not really feeling it, so I feel like I was just worried that because I'm not feeling it, I wasn't grasping a lot of the information at that point. And I feel like at least for me, when nonfiction books start to read a little bit textbooky, I kind of pull myself out and pay attention less because I don't love the whole like textbooky vibe. Like that's the reason that I was always hesitant to get into nonfiction, because I never wanted it to feel like I was reading a textbook. And at some points I did feel like this book was a little bit textbooky. I can't remember if I said that already or not, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I did in fact start another book last night. I started Where Sleeping Girls Lie. I specifically saw this from Carrie Can Read, or Kari, I can't remember how she pronounces her name, so I'm sorry if that is wrong, but technically this was an honorable mention for her. But when she mentioned it, I was like, wait, I have seen this book in so many places and I really want to read it, and it was available on Libby, so it was a win-win situation for me. I will say I went to Barnes & Noble yesterday, and when I was reading this book this morning I was like, oh, I wish I had the physical copy. Like I should have just bought it at Barnes & Noble because I saw it there and I thought about buying it, but I was like, no, I have it on Libby right now, like I'm not gonna buy it. But I kind of miss reading on an actual book. Like you guys have seen, I've been reading on my phone like this whole week. So I kind of miss holding like the actual book. Anyway, I'm 17% of the way through this book right now. This is a YA thriller, so it's reading pretty fast. But also at the same time, I'm not sure if I'm loving the way that it's written, but the story so far is so interesting. It's capturing my attention. It is about this girl who both of her parents have died. So she goes to this boarding school, and the boarding school is very much giving me Harry Potter vibes. Like they kind of sort them into houses, but her roommate disappears, and I think she starts kind of discovering some darker secrets while she's like trying to uncover what happened to her roommate, I think is where we're going. I'm not sure right now, but I'm loving how everything is going. I feel like this book has major potential right now.
Traffic ain't a waste of time when you were there to hold my hand, but I've had it with the 405 since you said I'd missed my last chance. But I know that you've been asking about me. If I tried though to get you back, would you let me? It might take some time to change your mind, but maybe everything we can.
We are back in front of my bookshelves for another update. I'm 30% of the way through this book right now. There's a lot going on with the main character. Like obviously she has been through a lot. She's recently an orphan and just has a lot going on mentally, and I so badly want her to start therapy. Like if I was her friend, I'd be like, girl, you've been through a lot. I think you should talk to someone. Also, why is this book making me want to go back to school? Like it is such a weird book to have that feeling to because someone literally gets missing, but I always wanted to go to like a boarding school or even like a stay away camp as a kid, and I think that's mostly because Harry Potter and then also watching Sweet Life on Deck, but I never got to do any of those things. Also, if I knew that you could study like on a cruise in college, I so would have done that. Anyway, I did predict something, which is always my fear when it comes to a thriller, but as long as I don't predict the big twist at the end or like predict a lot of things in the book, I will be okay. I did just predict something and I was like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. Also, the main character is making me so mad right now because obviously she's kind of looking into like this disappearance and what happened to her roommate, but the conclusions that she is jumping to is so odd. Like she's gathered a couple clues and she is just like jumping to left field, and I'm like, girl, what are you thinking? Like what is this thought process that you were going through? Because it makes no sense to me. Those are my thoughts right now. I feel like I just complained for a couple minutes even though I am really enjoying the book, so I don't know what's up with that. I'm 64% of the way through this book right now. I haven't updated it in a while because honestly I was pretty bored in the middle part of the book. It felt very slow and just didn't feel like enough was going on for it to be a thriller. I also was predicting a couple things, which was kind of annoying. And on another note, I don't think that this book is particularly scary or creepy at all, especially in like the middle part of it, but for some reason when I read it at night I get a little spooked. Basically the biggest problem that I was having though was that in the middle of the book it just felt way too slow and I was getting a little bit bored. Also, I kind of touched on this earlier, I really appreciate the mental health representation that is in this book, specifically the anxiety representation. I love when books talk about mental health. I feel like it's so important that books have started doing that more and more recently. I definitely think things are going to pick up as we get further along into the book because obviously towards the end of a thriller things start to get a little bit more intense, so I have higher hopes for the last half of this book. It is now the next day. I finished Where Sleeping Girls Lie last night. Àbíké. Yo. And my main problem with this book was that I really liked the beginning and I really liked the end, but the entire middle of this book I found to be very boring, way too slow for a thriller. And there was also just a couple plots that never really got tied together. There were a couple things that she was hinting at for a while that just never ended up seeing the light of day, if that makes sense. And maybe the author did that because she wanted the twist at the end to be unguessable. I don't know. I feel like if you throw in a couple of those plot points, you need to at least finish them. So with that being said, I'm gonna read this book a 3-star. It wasn't bad, but like I said, just way too slow at some points. That was my biggest problem with it. And then we'll go through the rest of the books I read in this video as well, starting with Funny Story. I really enjoyed this book. I think I'm gonna give this a 4.5 star. It is so close to being a 5-star, but honestly, I haven't thought about them much since I finished this book. Maybe a couple times, and it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, which is the only reason that it's not 5-star, at least for right now, because I did really enjoy this book and I highly recommend it. I think this book is 100% 100% worth the hype. Miss Emily Henry just does it for me almost every single time. Almost every single one of her books that I've read have been a 4 and up, so loved this one. And then I read All About Love. This is the only nonfiction book I read in this video, and I mentioned I was very excited to read this one because I feel like not a lot of people talk about nonfiction in the booktube space. I also talked about earlier how I don't love self-help books, and I knew that going into the book. So while there were parts of this book that I did really enjoy, I didn't love the entire thing, which is why I'm gonna stick to my rating of a 3-star for this book, which a 3-star isn't bad. I still recommend it. And then finally we'll also talk about the one DNF I had, which is Brotherless Night. Again, not a bad book. I just did not want to force myself to read a book that I wasn't in the mood for, because then that would just set the book up for failure, and that is one thing that I'm really trying to work on in 2025. I don't want to force myself to read any books that I'm not in the mood for. It's okay to DNF them. I can always come back to them when I'm in the mood for them. So that is why I DNF'd Brotherless Night. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!